What's up, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com, at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm your host, co-founder, and data guru here at Occupy Fantasy Moose, at CFB_Moose is where you can find me on Twitter, alongside Brian, at BrianJesterFF. He's the CEO and co-founder of Occupy, professional DFS player as well. What's up, Brian?
What's happening, Moose? Just when we thought we had a nice, easy slate with not much to worry about, potentially a lock button running back, Chris gets the plug done early for a change, and just all hell breaks loose in the Friday news dump. And now we're sitting here on Saturday trying to figure out what the hell to do for the slate.
Yeah, it's funny. I was like, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to have an if-then section. Like, where's the NBA people at? We're gonna have to write an if-then section for NFL. It's absolutely nuts. It's a crazy slate. And Brian, as you and I were talking about it before, it's one of those slates where you can't. It doesn't really make sense to start building lineups until tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think so. So right now, just if you've listened to the show before, you know my process is to build my lineups on Saturday. And I think what I'm going to do today is, at least because I'm 150 max in FanDuel and DraftKings again, I think I'm going to get my stacks set up if I can figure out which ones I'm going to use and get those custom rules put in. And then tomorrow, once we get word of what's going on, then I'll probably build. But to get all my rules and stuff in today, that way, I'm not completely starting from scratch once we get news tomorrow.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, you and I were talking about it beforehand, with reading the plug stuff. Most of the time, at least one or two games kind of all fit the process, whether it's the plug, your outputs, my outputs, the model. We're all in different directions this week, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Probably a bad thing.
It's yeah, I don't know. I think it's really tough this week as far as stacks go, because you have some that the betting markets like, some that the betting markets hate, and like you said, there's really no consensus.
Yeah.
And to me, it actually might be a slate where we end up with some more one-sided stacks than we normally do. 3x1s just on one side of a game, like Tampa Bay or Tennessee or whatever. So it's tough, but we'll talk through it here. And if you guys have questions along the way, hop in the chat to the right, and you will drive the show. So if you have questions, let's hear them, and we'll answer them.
Absolutely. Yep. We're here till about 2:30, answering questions. And if you're watching this on the replay and you have questions, go ahead and hit the comment button down below. We'll get notified and hopefully answer back. Brian, I see really quick while we're waiting for some questions that you apparently have not upgraded Discord, because I have the sweet, awesome background with the Discord guy. I think it's Wumbus, I think his name is. But pretty sick background, so you don't have to see how dirty my room is.
I'll give you credit. Pretty sick background. I thought I updated Discord too, so I'm kind of feeling left out here that I don't have that background.
I know, right? What's up, Adam and Patrick? Always glad to see them in the chat. Brian, let me ask you this. I know we were talking about, one-siding or stacking one side of the game, and one thing that both hit on both of our things was Tampa Bay and only playing, one off from Miami. As you mentioned, there's only a handful of people from Miami you would want to bring in your bring back. So why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, so we do have these scenarios a few times a year where generally we want to stack games, both sides in 150 or 20 max, whatever we're doing for tournaments. But there are some times where there's a big spread, and we think that maybe one or two guys could get there from the underdog team in a trailing game script. And it especially helps when the favored team, like Tampa Bay, is extremely pass heavy. And that's the situations where you don't necessarily need the other team to keep up, because we know Tom Brady's going to keep his foot on the gas. And especially after last week against New England, just a narrative-based expectation here, should be passing the ball even more this week. So that makes a ton of sense. And when you have an underdog team that really can't support 2 to 3 pass catchers in one winning lineup, then I think that's when you want to stick to the one-sided approach. And we have a couple of those types of games this week.
Definitely. Yeah, you punched that spot on there. John asks a question, says, could you go over some rules you'd implement for NFL Classic? I know that's kind of vague, but I've done a bunch for Showdown, but haven't implemented them much for NFL Classic.
Yeah, good question. And, I certainly don't make as many rules as I do for Classic as I normally do for Showdown, just for obvious reasons. So really the main rules, then if you just try to think about what's in the NFL strategy guide, which we have linked in the description below, if you just think about those rules and what that means for a builder if you're building, 20 or 150. So we talk about the Curtis Samuel theory, having a cheap player in all of your stacks. So if you're not doing the custom stacks like I am, every individual game, you could do, if these two quarterbacks are in the lineup, min of one, and then choose, the cheap players that are in that game. The other important rules are how many players per team you're using outside of stacks. So usually I set it to just a max of one, right? If I'm not stacking that game, I want a max of one player per team, because ideally we want that player to have a ceiling performance and take all the fantasy production in that game, because we're not stacking that game. The only time I'll set it to a max of two is if we have a lock button running back, or if they're just completely mispriced guys, and I don't mind having two of them in my lineup. But that's really, Moose, I don't know if I missed any, but that's really the only two key rules I'm thinking about doing for NFL Classic.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think as well. I don't really set many custom rules outside of the stack rules, but I don't really do custom rules for NFL Classic.
Yeah, it's really not a ton. Fortunately, the builder handles most of it, but it's not a ton of rules, because in Showdown, right, we have all the pre-built custom rules where you literally might have like 40 rules for a set of lineups. Stacking takes care of most of that in Classic.
Well, actually, let me ask you this then. While not necessarily a rule, how are you handling your exposures? Like, let's say you have a player. I know this is very broad, but I'm trying to think. Let me think of a player like random underperforming wide receiver. I think Odell Beckham's on this list. If someone like him, how are you figuring out what your exposure is going to be? Do you kind of just set a broad baseline, see how it fits, and adjust it as it goes for each player? Like, how are you handling exposures?
Yeah, so I mean, this week we have some really good underperforming wide receivers, as you see on screen here with Odell. And maybe this is the week, if you're using our builder, to do a min of one underperforming wide receivers in all of your lineups. And if you're hand building, and if you're not making 20 lineups, you're making less than 10 lineups, you're making one lineup, try to get as many underperforming wide receivers in there as you can for your tournament lineups. So for me, generally, if I'm not doing min one underperforming wide receiver, which sometimes just skews the exposures for me personally, it makes it tough. Normally I'll just go, min exposure of 15% for each underperforming wide receiver or something along those lines, and then adjust as it need be. And it's obviously way easier on FanDuel than it is DraftKings. So it's definitely depending on the site that you're playing, and it just depends on your comfort level.
Yeah, great answer there. Yeah, DotBet says the custom stack feature in the builder is next level. I completely agree. It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty and control every possible thing, it's the best thing that Jack's ever done.
I love that. That'll be the new tagline.
The best thing that Jack's ever done.
Yeah, lineup builder by Occupy Fantasy. Best thing.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
Should we should we talk about some of these stacks moves, just like the ones that are in the plug?
Yeah.
Maybe
absolutely.
some pros and cons and other ones we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you see on screen here, you can check it out at occupyfantasy.com. Chris writes up 3 games to stack each week. The first game is the Giants at Dallas. Brian, maybe put me in the prison or anything, but I definitely don't. I don't see this game popping off. I know there's a high Vegas total, flame me, throw me to the wolves, whatever it's called. I just don't see this game being a good stack.
It's really, really tough. And just from a pure game environment perspective, it looks like a great stack. The game total's gone up a couple of points. It's the highest total of the week. Not a ton of pressure for opposing quarterbacks. Daniel Jones can run. The issue, I guess, is one, if you just look at expected points for Dallas, Amari Cooper overperforming, not even expected that many points, less than 10 per game. CeeDee Lamb, less than 10 per game over the last 3 weeks. Dalton Schultz somehow taking all the production. Cedric Wilson not getting a ton of looks as the wide receiver 3. Zeke looking better from a usage perspective, but still splitting with Tony Pollard. And you put all that together, and you look at their prices. None are that cheap, especially Zeke, CD, and Amari. None fit the Curtis Samuel theory. So it's just really, really tough. The Giants side I actually like a lot better. And I think this sounds crazy. I'm actually considering just one-siding this game with the Giants. Daniel Jones, all the cheap receivers they have, Saquon, Evan Ingram, and just rotating one of the Dallas players through on the other side. because it's at their prices and the way they're using these guys, it's really tough for multiple Dallas players to hit value, it seems like. So, again, I don't think it's that crazy, Moose, to not like this game as much. But again, we trust Chris's writing and we trust Chris's picks. It's just that this week there aren't any slam dunk stacks that we love to play.
Yeah, and we've always talked about it before that if you find a reason why you like a thing, go ahead and play it. I trust Chris. Chris wrote it up. It does have a high total. I would not front you at all if you played this game stack. It's just I don't think it's going to be one that I'm playing.
Yeah, I mean it's our official Occupied recommendation, right? It's in the plug. That's what we're officially recommending.
Yeah.
I like it. And maybe I'm nitpicking and looking for different ways out this week. It's just that again nothing stands out, so it's tough.
Exactly. Yep. The next stack he wrote up, Green Bay at Cincinnati. It's Cincinnati. I have to love it. Like the fanalytic in me says so. You must do 100% Cincinnati stacks every week. What do you think about this stack, Brian?
Here again, it's another tough one where on paper it looks good because of the game total, and obviously the production flows through Devontae Adams on the Green Bay side. But then we have three different guys fighting for targets in Cincinnati. They're already a little bit of a run-heavy team. Absolute chaos in their backfield now. Yeah. Nothing really cheap and exciting on the Green Bay side outside of Randall Cobb. So again, it's one of the better ones for sure. Mm-hmm. Is it a must play? I don't know.
Yeah. We also have some questions in here as well. Dot says, how are you handling the Cook Madison scenario? I know there are some cheap running backs, P. Ryan Williams for net. If Cook is out, are you lock button Madison?
That's a great question. I would hope that Cook would be out because that would just give us some more clarity at the running back position. If you look now, I'm just trying to get the prices up here. Madison is 5,500 on DraftKings, 6,500 on FanDuel. Not necessarily lock button material. Maybe on DraftKings at 5,500. 6,500 on FanDuel is not a lock button because there are, like you said, a couple cheap guys this week. I would certainly rather play him. And if Cook is active, which it sounds like he will be, said he's going to fight through the injury, it just muddies the backfield. I know they're 7-point or 10-point favorites. You just can't trust Cook's effectiveness. We talked about it literally every show we've done about high ankle sprains. And then Madison, maybe he gets work, maybe he doesn't. It's just you can't really trust that. So we need Cook to be out in order to play anybody from this backfield, I think.
Yeah. Hog Dark says, in most of my 3-1 stacks, I have 1 to 4 underperforming wide receivers. I don't think I've ever played 4 I don't think I've ever played 4 before. But
I did in the FanDuel live final.
Oh,
played
yeah,
4.
You did. Yes, you did. Yeah, that's great. If you can have 4, that's great. FBI. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Nope, sorry.
I was gonna say, for some reason, totally not the FBI. Didn't realize it wasn't Ed. But yeah, Ed says, if you're doing an afternoon slate, would you run a 3-2 stack from one of Chris's top stacks, or is that too crazy?
No. So if you listen to some of our shows we've done with Jack, we've done a couple over the last couple of years on smaller slates, 4 slates or less. That's when you start to get into the 3x2 stacks, 4x1 stacks, and even 4x2 stacks, especially for like 2 and 3 game slates. So no, it's not crazy at all. Once you get 4 games and below, that's when you want to start doing those extra stacks, adding one more player, because it's crazy leverage on those size slates.
Yep, exactly. And Aaron says, Schultz is a great one-off in the 3x1. He's not chalky either. I like that idea, Aaron.
Yeah, top of the model. And I think if you listen to our Roto-Grinders podcast we did yesterday, it just feels like a stupid play to keep playing Schultz, right? Like his price is up, he keeps scoring touchdowns. He's not like an athletic dude. So like it's just like, man, how can I really keep playing this guy? And he keeps producing. So I get it. I think if they're going to continue to use him the way they are using him, yeah, he's a great play in stacks and just by himself too.
Definitely. Cool. So let's hop on to the last game stack Chris wrote up. Arizona at San Francisco. With Trey Lance set to make his first NFL start. How are you handling this, Brian? Because I know limited sample size. He's still top 3 in the model though. Last time I checked. So I kind of like this one.
I like it too. And then I looked at the betting markets, and this total's down like 5 points. It opened at like 53.5, and it's down to 48.5. And the fact that Trey Lance is going to run more, scramble more design runs, that lowers the game stack ceiling a bit. George Kittle's out. That takes away a stacking option. Eli Mitchell's back, so they're going to split the backfield. Like it just again, it just another game with warts that is in the top tier of stacks. But again, we can certainly nitpick it and find reasons not to play it. Maybe the Arizona side's the way to go. But then who do you run it back with? Just Debo? I don't know. It's again very, very tough.
That's very tough. That's when you play. I don't know. Does FanDuel still have it? The super flex for NFL.
I think they do, right?
Yeah, that's where you run it back with the one off Trey Lance.
Yeah, yeah, college football style, but just don't pair him with anybody.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. So those are the three official stacks we recommend. Again, those are great stacks if you wanted to play them. Is there anything else, Brian? Any game stack that's kind of popping off for you that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I've talked about it. I think at least once so far this week in Philly and Carolina, which I feel like that total should be higher. I'm still kind of mesmerized that it's not. At least at Pinnacle, people are starting to pick up on it. That game total is up a little bit. Let me pull it up here exactly this movement. Yeah, it's at 46 now. It was 45 earlier in the week. I feel like this should be like over 50. I'm again, normally when I feel this way, it's very wrong, but it just feels like this should be higher. We have two underperforming wide receivers in this game, Devonta Smith and Robbie Anderson. So that's all automatically a plus. We got two. This is not even crazy anymore. Two rushing quarterbacks. Sam Darnold is literally running around the goal line every game. Yeah. Jalen Hurts, obviously. So two rushing quarterbacks and underperforming wide receivers. Like, again, and condensed target trees, right? Like, especially on the Carolina side, which is a way that lower scoring games can be an optimal stack if all the production goes to just a couple of guys, right? That's, if you have a spread out attack and the total's only 45, that makes it really tough. But if, two guys are getting 20% plus the opportunities, they could easily be a three-man stack.
Yeah, no, it's funny because it seems like whether it's the Pick'em, the Survivor, DFS games, that we always seem to have Carolina involved somehow. And it's not really gone our way, but eventually one of these times it will. Tron says, do you have any particular ways you might be looking to play off the potential extreme of Derrick Henry variance this week?
I mean, not really. If I'm playing him, I'll probably try to match the field in multi lineups. But I think there's so much value this week that you can play him and be okay with it. Again, we talk about playing high volume, popular running backs. Derrick Henry fits the mold to a T, especially with his new passing game usage. In NFL Classic, I don't try to worry about the chalk as much as I do other sports. So pretty lame answer, but I don't really have any ways I'm looking to get around that.
Yeah. Ed says cold stacks. Wait, actually, never mind. It's a Monday night game. You can still stack them. I mean,
that's actually the best time to stack the Colts. When they're an underdog in the showdown, get a 5-1 or 4-2. That's the best leverage you'll find for a Colts game.
Absolutely. DFS says when 20 maxing with these game stacks not popping as in weeks past, would it be crazy to stack one side of the game with the top quarterbacks in the model?
I don't think it's crazy at all, right? So the Jalen Hurts, obviously, Tannehill, Trey Lance, like we've talked about a couple of these guys in game stacks. Mm-hmm. Kirk Cousins near the top, Tom Brady. Honestly, I think that's the way to go. The more I think about it, as I'm playing around with builds this morning, I honestly think that's the way to go.
Until Schefter tweets at, well, apparently it's early now, so he might be tweeting it out now. But until Schefter tweets out, all the hell breaks loose. People are going to be inactive, and then we're going to have to go back from square one.
Yeah, you mentioned that he keeps tweeting it earlier and earlier, right? Just this time next year, he'll be tweeting inactive on Friday night.
Yeah, exactly. If like someone gets injured, as soon as it gets injured that week, Schefter's going to tweet out, Trey Lance is expected to play this week with it.
Yeah.
So, cool. So 10 more minutes. If you have any last lingering questions, definitely go ahead and get them answered now. Brian, I wanted to ask you another question. I know someone mentioned it, playing the afternoon slates. We've had some members and some staff members as well have success with afternoon slates. Have you been playing any afternoon slates or even like the one-off showdown slates?
Haven't, and I probably should be, and I do want to practice some just because this is what happens every time, right? Like Thanksgiving rolls around, playoffs rolls around. It's like, God, I'm rusty making these lineups when like I have all these opportunities all year to practice. So I probably should start adding some allocation. I know Jack plays it a ton, but yeah, it's really nice because you do get that extra leverage opportunities with super stacking games. Whether this is the week to do it or not, I don't know. But just real quick, Moose, as I'm looking at the model, I did want to mention this. Dot Bet's point about stacking just one side of the game with top quarterbacks in the model. If you look at like our best game stacks, Arizona and San Francisco, both quarterbacks don't rank in the top half of the model. Just Trey Lance does. If you look at the Giants and Dallas, both quarterbacks rank in the bottom half of the model, actually. If you look at, what's the other one we were looking at? What's the third game that Chris likes?
The San Francisco game?
No, San Francisco,
Cincinnati.
Giants, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow ranks in the second in the bottom half of the model. Aaron Rodgers kind of middle of the pack. So like normally the model aligns on these, as you mentioned at the top of the show. So the fact that they don't, it's tough, dude. It's really tough. I mean, I think it's giving more and more possibility to that.
Yeah. Let's see here. Juan says Antonio Brown or Damian Harris in my flex.
Let's see here. Is this for DFS, Juan, or is it for season long? And is it PPR or is it not? Give us some context here. Happily answer. I do like both guys this week.
Speaking of Green Bay, I see again I might butcher his name. Equinemius got elevated from the practice squad. So let's hope we might be doing some darts if you're playing like the random one-off showdowns.
There you go. He got I think a target last week. So yeah, if you're looking for a cheap option,
definitely. Yeah, Juan says flex and season
long. If it's PPR, I'll go with Antonio Brown. If it's not, I'll go Damian Harris.
Yep.
I like both guys this week. You're flipping coins, I think.
Yeah. Dabba says, yeah, that was the reasoning for my question. Exactly, the model is not aligning. Pretty interesting. So, I mean, I probably should have read this part in the plug, but it almost seems like it's a week where maybe you lower your allocation down a little bit.
He says as he enters every satellite possible. So
I
agree with you most. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's when you say you go to the Discord channel, you go to the daily plug alerts, and you click on the CS:GO plug, and you just absolutely slam. Because if you haven't noticed, our CS:GO writer, our members, has been crushing some CS:GO lately, and it's actually very fun to watch.
It is. It's a good DFS experience.
Definitely. Especially these best of one games. I don't know if they're the best of one still. They're great. They're just very quick, over to the point, like 30 minutes. You watch on your lunch break, you're good.
Exactly.
Ed says, who's you're most exposed and who you're playing we shouldn't?
I can't even answer that question, Ed, because I haven't built my lineup yet. I guess I think the Philly Carolina game is just like it keeps sticking out to me, and nothing else is really saying like. Obviously, our model likes it. The betting market likes it a little bit, but not as much as I think it should. So that's the game that I'm playing that I probably will play that I don't think is a popular recommendation. Yeah, again, so ask me again tomorrow morning because right now I haven't built anything yet, so it's kind of tough to say.
Yeah. So we will be going live tomorrow on this YouTube live again because apparently Periscope is rip and Twitter live just doesn't work. So either it's going to be myself and Chris or just Chris. We got to work that out. But he'll be answering questions going up to lock around 11 o'clock tomorrow. Ed said a Philly 3-1 stack is what I've been landing on. I don't hate that.
It makes too much sense, dude. Like it really does. Like you play Hurts, get the rushing, play underperforming receiver Devonta Smith. You play whichever other cheap Philly guy you like, whether it's Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, one of the tight ends. And then you run it back with either target monster DJ Moore or underperforming wide receiver Robbie Anderson. Like, it's crazy. And the fact that they're relatively affordable as a stack, makes it even all that much better. Because the way it works, Moose, right? Like, if you stack a really expensive squad like Kansas City, right? They got to do what they did last week in order to hit, right? They have to hit their absolute ceiling. If you play a cheaper stack, they don't have to put up, 40 real life points. They can put up 24, 27, and as long as they hit enough points with those 3 or 4 guys, and you fill in the rest of your lineup with high performing studs, you can easily get there in the tournament. So, that's definitely a factor, and I think probably even a bigger factor this week than it normally is.
Yeah, you pretty much hit that there. Dot says, I'm thinking to go back with the mid-price running back strategy. I'm debating matching the field with Henry or just excluding him and paying up for maybe some more expensive stacks. You kind of talked about that, but what do you think about the mid-price running back strategy this week?
Yeah, so I think this is the week not to do it actually, because some of the stacks are cheaper. If you look at the model, Kamara, Henry, Eckler near the top. Najee Harris is priced up more. Saquon priced up a little more, and then you have the cheaper guys we talked about. Damian Williams. We haven't really talked about him, but in the plug, Damian Williams, Leonard Fournette. If we get Samaje Perine or James Conner or whoever, yeah, I think this is more of a stars and scrubs running back week than it was last week. So, and this is all about being flexible and having the general strategy of what we do, but then each week the exposures change a little bit just based on what the slate is giving us, and the fact that we don't have Baltimore on the main slate, the fact that we don't have Kansas City or Buffalo. Who's in the Thursday game?
It's the Seattle and the Rams.
Yeah, we don't have the Rams. We don't have Seattle. Like these teams that are normally expensive to stack, we don't have them. So, it's a pretty rare week in that sense, and it's a part of the reason why most of the stacks don't pop off this week. But I think it dictates a little bit different line of construction and 150 max strategy than we normally have.
Yeah, so I'm really curious because again, your lineups aren't final. You're still having to build a lot of things. Still not 100% about your stacks either. So I'm really curious on how the Tuesday $1 Million Mission Stream is going to go. Just because.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, definitely. And it says, I love Kamara in my Philly 3-1 stacks. He fits so well. What do you think about Atlanta and London? If I remember correctly, they do really well in London. I don't think the London game's on the slate, right?
Yeah, the London game's not on the slate. I think it's maybe just a separate thought from Ed. But that showdown slate is super interesting. By the way, we do have ownership up for that slate. It's not a primetime slate, but Jack and I did put up ownership yesterday, so go check that out in the model, in the builder. That showdown slate is super interesting because salaries is non-existent, right? Calvin Ridley's out. They're playing the Jets. Cordell Patterson's going to be like 30% MVP, which is like the craziest sentence I've ever said. It's an insane slate for leverage. So if you're looking for an early morning sweat, I'd say definitely play that Atlanta showdown slate.
It reminds me of like League of Legends when you used to wake up and it's the last game and you already know if you got a sweat or not. I'm just gonna have to do it with the London game and just wake up a little bit later.
Yeah, seriously.
Just turn it on second half.
Exactly.
All right, this is what I need to root for.
Exactly. That's a great move.
Definitely. So we got like a minute or so left, Ryan. Is there any last lingering thoughts or anything else you wanted to mention?
I'll just say that doing the show actually helped me organize my thoughts a bit on the week. I was unsure even 30 minutes ago coming in what I wanted to do with stacks, but talking it out, I think it comes to a pretty clear conclusion of what to do this week. More one-sided game stacks, stars and scrubs at running back, play the underperforming wide receivers. Looks like the strategy this week. That could obviously always change with the late night inactive news and when I actually try to build, but I think that's the move.
Should be fun. So yeah, I'm curious. I still need to do some building. I still need to look at some other things. But overall, it should be a fun slate. So until actually Ed says he's excited for the interview we're going to have when he wins 6 figures this week. Got the spot right.
We'll schedule you now, Ed.
Yep. I'll pencil you in for Wednesday.
Yes.
Perfect.
Make sure you're free, Ed.
Yep. All right, so that'll do it for this week's show at Occupy Fantasy. Again, check out Chris tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for his pregame breakdowns. Until next time, I'm Moose and he's Brian. We're from OccupyFantasy.com. Have a good night.
See ya.